Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another of Ken's marvellous parties. I'm Anthony Andrews, and that you were listening to earlier on was Jamie Parker and his incredible band. Jamie and his band are going to be playing for us throughout tonight, and I was going to say, and you've already done it, but we'll do it again, I'd like you to help me give them a very, very warm welcome for being here tonight. It says here, cheers, whistles, and whoops. Now, I've got one simple, very simple task this evening, but before I do that, I can't resist grabbing this moment to just pay a little personal tribute of my own. We are, of course, here to celebrate Ken and his wonderful life, and indeed an extraordinary and wonderful partnership. And it's that partnership that makes me realize that we're only able to be here because of the love and the care and the energy and the incredible attention to detail of one man. Derek Granger, stand up, take a bow. So my main role this evening is one that gives me the most enormous pleasure. I'm here quite simply to introduce the introducer. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you our host tonight, that supreme master of ceremonies, the scintillating, the electrifying, the inimitable, the irrepressible, the unsurpassable, the unforgettable prince of stuttering loquacity, the one and only Nikolas Grace.
Are you all right? Are you all right? That's better. Right. Now, we start with the serious part of the evening first, all right? The winner this evening is not La La Land, is not Lion, is not Moonlight, but Around the World in 80 Days, with Pinocchio as a very close runner-up. But the real winner is Kenneth Partridge. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. On behalf of Derek and of Kenneth's niece, Jane, and all her family who've flown in from Malta to be here with us this evening. And a huge welcome from me, Nikolas Grace, and thank you again to Jamie Parker and his band who are playing for us tonight. Oh, yes. Save a bit of applause for the end, won't you? Good. One member of this audience wrote to Derek to say he hoped that this occasion would be suitably outrageous. With Kenneth as the absent star and me as your MC, outrageous will be the order of the day. That wonderful blast of American music from Jamie's band was a reminder of how much Kenneth loved America. From the mid-60s, he was a constant visitor to New York, Fire Island, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And it was in San Francisco that he had his portrait painted by Ivor Yeager, a fashionable Californian artist. Through that ravishingly glamorous and viper-tongued actress, Coral Brown, he was introduced to the great American theater agent, Milton Goldman. When Kenneth asked her, "Only one introduction?" Coral drawled in her sophisticated Australian accent, "You don't need any more, darling. Milton holds the key of the door." And indeed he did. It was at Milton's East Side parties that Kenneth met the stars. He asked Fay Wray, what it was like to be clasped in King Kon's paw. He chatted to Myrna Loy about the 1934 comedy thriller, The Thin Man. And he chatted to the silent movie star, Lillian Gish, about her time in Broken Blossoms. There was a bit of a one-sided conversation as she was a silent movie star. And he became a doting theatre companion to Hermione Gingold, whose rasping innuendos he relished like a true connoisseur. Ever adventurous, he paraded around a Fire Island pool wearing a pair of angel's wings salvaged from a Folie Bergère sail. He once found himself in a Harlem steam bath. Why? Where he swore that the dusky clientele started chanting, "There's gonna be a white wedding." That's what he said. But by the highlight of his visit to New Year's Eve parties in New York, the main party was the one at the Actors Studio, where he danced with Judy Garland, and indeed, he did become a friend of Dorothy's. When Kenneth died, he received amazing press coverage. Full pages in the Times, The Independent, and big obits in The Guardian, The Telegraph, and The Scotsman. Never shy about being the center of attention, he would certainly have loved it, and especially being hailed as a trendsetter and a trailblazer of the 60s. Quotes, outrageously spoken, outrageously outspoken, outrageously exuberant, extrovert, ebullient, boisterous, a force of nature. These were the phrases which figured more than once. Now, to little Kenneth. He was born in Deptford on August the 24th, 1926, but moved to Orpington in his early boyhood, when his father was made manager of the local electrical works. His father would dearly have loved a son who grew up to join him in the local pub and to talk about football. But father and son were doomed to mutual disappointment. Kenneth received the scantiest of educations. He was also profoundly dyslexic. Derek tells me that putting this guest list together from Ken's address books was like cracking the Enigma code at Bletchley Park, or even deciphering the Dead Sea Scrolls. In fact, Ken left school at 14, but by a marvelous stroke of luck, a discerning art teacher had spotted that Kenneth possessed one very special talent, and that got him into Bromley Art School. There, Kenneth suddenly flourished. He'd found his true bent, as they say, his métier, and it was art. After art school, he joined the advertising agency J. Walter Thompson as a layout artist, and there he met the first of his great mentors, Michael Patmore, grandson of the poet Coventry Patmore, who helpfully instilled into him the faint beginnings of a metropolitan gloss. By now the war was on, and in 1942 he was recruited as one of the first Bevin boys, named after the Minister of Labour, Ernest Bevin. He was sent to work in the coalfields of South Wales. Going down the mines of Merthyr Tydfil might have seemed like a daunting experience for some, but Kenneth loved the camaraderie and human warmth of working down the pits, and he carried those memories with him for the rest of his life, just as he remained close to his fellow Bevin boys. His miner's lamp was always proudly displayed in his sitting room. After the war, he joined Simpsons of Piccadilly, but I don't think Georgina knew anything about it. As assistant window dresser, where he worked with the great Natasha Kroll, a high priestess of less is more. Her displays, stark and arresting, were of eye-catching simplicity. She set Kenneth an example he was never to forget. From Simpsons, he went on to design the Bond Street windows for the great cosmetics queen, Elizabeth Arden, and also for other 40 shops around the country. Kenneth then received an invitation from Jaeger to become their chief window dresser. It was the great turning point of his career. Jaeger, with its large window in the middle of Regent Street, provided him with a huge canvas on which he could really let himself go, and displays there were startlingly original, winning prizes and much acclaim. If they didn't stop the traffic in the street, they certainly stopped the people on the pavement. His famous Easter window, featuring a giant egg, with 40 surrounding eggs in the style of famous artists became a fashion talking point. One of his displays was in the rough-hewn wooden style of the American sculptor Louise Nevelson. When her agents complained of plagiarism, Kenneth retorted with typical bravado, "I was simply paying homage to a great artist." And then Ernestine Carter, doyenne of fashion writers, devoted a full-page spread to him in the Sunday Times, hailing him as one of the tastemakers of the times. This is Kenneth with a picture of one of his Jaeger windows taken from the Sunday Times. It was in 1949 that Kenneth had met Derek. Derek was then living in Brighton and working as a journalist. One day, an old friend of his, a retired naval commander, called him to say that he'd asked a boy from London down for the weekend, but as he already had a full house, could Derek put him up for a couple of nights? When Derek's doorbell rang, he found on his doorstep a very blonde, pink-cheeked South Londoner of breathtaking freshness. "I believe you're giving me a bed for the night," said Kenneth. And he stayed for 66 years. That weekend, Derek, who was also the local film critic, got Kenneth in to see the much-lauded new film of the day, The Third Man. Its famous zither theme became their song. After a few months, they moved to a new flat on the top floor of a dilapidated Edwardian house in Hove. Kenneth decorated it with Matisse posters and blue dyed fishnet stuck all over with real starfish. Among their early visitors was the actress Hazel Terry, John Gielgud's cousin, described by a critic as beautiful as a galleon and twice as large. And also Moira Fraser and Elizabeth Welsh, who were then both appearing in Brighton in the review Oranges and Lemons. Welsh was a superb black singer from the original Blackbirds Company, and all of them were to remain Kenneth's friends for life, as was another early visitor, now a much-quoted arbiter of taste and style, but then a very young Nicholas Haslam. Now, Nicky Haslam was meant to be here this evening, but somehow an invitation to another event, another ceremony far less auspicious than this, called the Oscars, seemed to drag Nicky Haslam away, so he sends his apologies. There's no official record, but it's gone down in history that Nicky Haslam dubbed the dyed fishnet as unutterably common. Derek tells me that his early years living with a tempestuous exponent of the life force could sometimes be problematic, and there were quite a few dented pots and pans to prove it. But their partnership endured despite the hazard of occasional flying objects, and in fact, it endured until just over a year ago, in 2006. And they were among the first gay couples, that was in 2006, they're among the first gay couples, to have a civil partnership. Kenneth made the lady registrar laugh so much that she cried out, "Oh, do stop it! I'm supposed to be conducting a serious procedure." And here they are, being very serious. How happy they look just after the ceremony. In 1952, when Derek became the drama critic of the Financial Times, they moved to London. By 1964, Kenneth had become friendly with Brian Epstein, the young manager of a new pop group called The Beatles. When Epstein told Kenneth that he wanted to introduce the Beatles to the London music industry, Kenneth suggested he should give a party, that Brian's Belgravia rooftop would be the perfect place and that he would do the decor for it. The party duly went ahead, with only occasional panics. Queenie, Epstein's mother, protested that the colour of the floral arrangements was bound to bring bad luck. So Kenneth had to return them to the florists for a quick emergency dyeing. Then he heard the bouncers on the door were trying to eject a rather frail young woman who claimed to have lost her invitation. "You mustn't eject that lady," he said. "She's the guest of honor. It's Judy Garland." Like most people who encountered him, the rescued Judy Garland kept in touch with him until her death. Kenneth quickly hit it off with John Lennon, who was impressed with Kenneth's party decor, and asked him if he'd decorate his new house, Kenwood, deep in the heart of Surrey in the stockbroker belt. It was a hugely extravagant makeover which brought him much publicity. He then decorated Ringo Starr's flat in Mayfair and later the Beatles' Apple shop in Baker Street. So why don't we take a look at the Fab Four at the time of Beatlemania?
Question, would you be quiet, please?
Please sing something.
No! Sorry.
Next question. You can sing.
No, we need money first.
That was what they looked like then. Why don't we now have a clip of the Beatles song and a selection of Beatles numbers? Let's listen to the boys themselves. Kenneth, now freelance, was working at the top of the London fashion world. He joined forces with Sir Nicholas Seckers, nicknamed Mickey, the silk manufacturer, a wildly flamboyant and colourful Hungarian émigré. For Mickey's grand Sloane Street showroom, Kenneth created kaleidoscopic silk displays, and he soon began travelling with him across the world as Mickey expanded his business. Kenneth was now also working closely with the fashion industry's leading couturiers. For Norman Hartnell, who dubbed him both eminent and fashionable, he designed a smart new salon in Bruton Street. And for the charming Hardy Amys, he created the first ever men's catwalk show. You get the feeling? Its closing feature was the appearance of a giant papier-mâché hand, waving regally behind the models as they took their bows. According to Hardy Amys, this was the Queen giving her seal of approval to the first menswear parade on a catwalk. For John Packer of Reed and Taylor, the Scottish cloth manufacturers, he created a series of spectacular fashion shows, with Princess Margaret as the invariable guest of honor, and all of them taking place in such exotic locations as a German Schloss, a chateau in Champagne, an English castle, a Venetian palazzo, and for a show at Castle Howard, I wonder who rigged that, he ordered a huge fleet of limousines to convey the guests to and fro. These limousines he conveniently hired from the local undertakers. His clients were also his mentors, and all became lifelong friends. Kenneth's work wasn't always at the high end of fashion. He made a pioneering home makeover program for the BBC called Make It My Place, and he also contributed a series for the Daily Mirror on one-room living. Another great mentor was the collector and picture framer Alfred Hecht. Alfred helped him to build up his picture collection, and through him he met Graham Sutherland and John and Mfanwe Piper, who both became close to him, with Kenneth often at Piper's Thameside farmhouse, where he bought pictures directly from John's studio. As well as Piper and Sutherland, his art collection included a Henry Moore maquette and a prize Edward Burrough, Three Sailors at the Bar. But perhaps Alfred's greatest gift to him was to introduce him to the Rain family, first to Max and Jane, and then to Robbie and Janie, who again became friends of a lifetime. Friendship was, indeed, the great theme of his life. Kenneth had a great wonderful flair for creating parties. One newspaper said, "No smart party was complete in London without his magic touch." Here we have the Bar of Sotheby's, as seen by a lot of drunks, I presume. maybe we can't focus it anymore, obviously. So the guests at the Sotheby's Bar obviously had a wonderful, wonderful time. It included a full-scale version of the bar at the Folies Bergère with a real live barmaid standing in for Manet's model. Now, in the 1960s, Ken designed a skating party for Hardy Amy's, transforming the Queensway skating rink into a frozen Russian lake, surrounded by silver birches, and with sledges hung with sleigh bells for the non-skating VIPs. He told the press he'd also ordered reindeer, but they hadn't arrived on time. For that exquisitely dandified and eccentric couturier, Bunny Roger, who was also a war hero and rated by Tatler as one of the great party givers of the 20th century, he designed his last 3 parties: the Diamond Party for his 60th, the Amethyst Ball for his 70th, and the Great Ball of Fire for his 80th. Before the Amethyst Ball, Bunny told Kenneth he wasn't feeling very well, but if he should pop his clogs before the guests arrived, would Kenneth ensure that he was properly laid out so that all the guests could file past him to see his outfit. For the Great Ball of Fire party, Kenneth designed a vision of Dante's Inferno, which had Bunny emerging through flames and smoke to greet his 400 guests, with Kenneth, horned, red-suited, and armed with a trident, acting as an attendant devil. As most people would agree, it was a very appropriate outfit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as this is party time, please will you welcome back onto the stage Jamie Parker and his band, who hopefully are standing in the wings, desperate to reappear. Maybe they need, yes, they are, hooray! Please welcome them back. They're so young for a band, aren't they, really? Do you remember the Joe Loss Orchestra? Victor Sylvester? Okay. Anyone else? Edmund Ross. Hey, here we have the Jamie Parker Band. Hey! And they're going to play you one of Kenneth's favorite numbers written by Cole Porter. My life was simply hellish. I didn't stand a chance. I thought that I would relish a tomb like General Grant's, but I feel so swellish, so Elsa Maxwellish, that I'm giving a dance. I feel like $1 million. I feel simply out of sight. So come on down, I'm throwing the ball tonight. I'm full of the old paprika, I'm loaded with dynamite. So come on down, I'm throwing the ball tonight. A certain person just brought some news, and wow, was it great. So I'm rehearsing my dancing shoes, 'cause now I can celebrate. I feel like $1 million, I feel simply out of sight. So come on down, I'm throwing the ball tonight. I invited Monty Woolley, I invited FDR, and to do their stunts I asked the Luntz and Grace, Lord Burla, Mae West, and Harper's Bazaar. I invited Ethel Merman, and of course I asked Fanny Bryce, and to all of my bids, every one of those kids wired back how nice. And so I feel like $1 million, I feel simply out of sight. So come on down, I'm feeling magnific, I'm throwing a terrific ball tonight. Okay, you're fired. Right, marvelous. Now, Kenneth, that's who we're talking about. Kenneth adored cats. He had 3, Norman, Gerald, and Charles, all the progeny of a wild alley cat who haunted the street. One night, as Kenneth prepared to be driven to the Cotswolds to stay with Hardy Amy's, there occurred a truly Dickensian scene. Knowing a good touch when she saw one, the old feral mother, rather like a fallen Victorian woman, had left a kitten on Kenneth's doorstep. Hardy Amys, a doting animal lover, told him, "We can't leave the kitten." So the kitten was packed into a cardboard box and taken off for a suitably upmarket weekend in Hardy's Cotswold schoolhouse. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a little diversion. Please will you welcome my friend, Jeremy Irons, who is going to read Gus the Theatre Cat from T.S. Eliot's Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats.
Gus is the cat at the theatre door. His name, as I ought to have told you before, is really Asparagus. But that's such a fuss to pronounce that we usually just call him Gus. His coat's very shabby, he's thin as a rake, and he suffers from palsy that makes his paw shake. Yet he was, in his youth, quite the smartest of cats, but no longer a terror to mice and to rats. For he isn't the cat that he was in his prime, though his name is quite famous, he says, in its time. And whenever he joins his friends at their club, which takes place at the back of the neighbouring pub, he loves to regale them, if someone else pays, with anecdotes drawn from his palmiest days. For he was once a star, the highest degree. He's acted with Irving, he's acted with Tree. And he likes to relate his success on the halls, where the gallery once gave him 7 catcalls. But his grandest creation, as he loves to tell, was Fire Frory Fiddle, the Fiend of the Fell. I have played, so he says, every possible part. And I used to know 70 speeches by heart. I'd extemporize backchat, I knew how to gag, and I knew how to let the cat out of the bag. I knew how to act with my back and my tail. With an hour of rehearsal, I never could fail. I had a voice that would soften the hardest of hearts, whether I took the lead or in character parts. I've sat by the bedside of poor little Nell. When the curfew was rung, I swung on the bell. In the pantomime season, I never fell flat, and I once understudied Dick Whittington's cat. But my grandest creation, as history will tell, was Friar Frory Fiddle, the Fiend of the Fell. Then, if someone would give him a toothful of gin, he would tell how he once played a part in East Lynne. At a Shakespeare performance, he once walked on Pat when some actor suggested the need for a cat. He once played a tiger, would do it again, which an Indian colonel pursued down a drain, and he thinks that he still can, much better than most, produce blood-curdling noises to bring on the ghost. And he once crossed the stage on a telegraph wire to rescue a child when a house was on fire. And he says, now these kittens, they do not get trained as we did in the days when Victoria reigned. They never get drilled in a regular troop, and they think they're smart just to jump through a hoop. And he'll say, as he scratches himself with his claws, no, the theatre is certainly not what it was. These modern productions are all very well, but there's nothing to equal from what I hear tell, that moment of mystery when I made history as Friar Frory Fiddle, the Fiend of the Fell.
Another of Ken's old friends was the 50s star Elizabeth Welsh. And although she was still valiant, she was now becoming increasingly frail. Liz had come over from America before the war to join Florence Mills and the Blackbirds in Europe, and had remained in Paris and London ever since. At this point, Kenneth completely took her over, managed her affairs, got her a place at the Actors' Home, Denville Hall, and eventually, after much searching, found an old buff envelope locked away in a bank vault. Inside were share certificates, which were mostly gifts from her old lovers. There were enough in there to comfort her for the rest of her days. When her brother came over on a visit from New York, he cried, "Sister, baby, you's rich!" Let's hear that superlative artist singing Stormy Weather from Derek Jarman's magical version of The Tempest.
Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky, stormy weather, since my man and I ain't together.
Wasn't she amazing? Really amazing. For those of us who are lucky enough to work with her, she was the legend. Whenever you were standing next to her or doing a scene with her or singing a song, she just exuded this extraordinary beauty and charm. And of course, you spotted Christopher Biggins getting his face into the shot there, didn't you? Now, Kenneth had always loved the theatre, and in the immediate post-war period, he'd often gone to the Old Vic, and although without a jot of literary training, he formed a deep passion for Shakespeare. Shakespeare's passionate sweep and visceral intensity hugely appealed to him. The last play he ever saw was Timon of Athens, and Derek describes him watching it as enthralled as a child at a pantomime. 400 years after writing his plays, Shakespeare had found one of his most appreciative groundlings. Now please will you welcome the Brideshead Brigade, Jeremy Irons, Phoebe Nichols, and Diana Quick. Come on, Wilton. You're first.
Oh, yes. Fear no more the heat of the sun, nor the furious winter's rages. Thou thy worldly task hast done. Home art gone, and ta'en thy wages. Golden lads and girls, all dust, as chimney sweepers, come to dust. Fear no more the frown of the great. Thou art past the tyrant's stroke. Care no more to clothe and eat. To thee the reed is as the oak, the sceptre, learning, physic, must all follow this and come to dust. Fear no more the lightning flash, nor the all-dreaded thunderstone. Fear not slander, censure rash. Thou hast finished joy and moan. All lovers young, all lovers must consign to thee and come to dust. No exorciser harm thee, nor no witchcraft charm thee. Ghost unlaid forbear thee, nothing ill come near thee. Quiet consummation have, and renowned be thy grave.
When icicles hang by the wall, and Dick the shepherd blows his nail, and Tom bears logs into the hall, and milk comes frozen home in pail. When blood is nipped and ways be foul, then nightly sings the staring owl. To-woo, to-wit, to-woo. A merry note, while greasy Joan doth keel the pot. When all around the wind doth blow, and coughing drowns the parson's saw, and birds sit brooding in the snow, and Marion's nose is red and raw. When roasted crabs hiss in a bowl, then nightly sings the staring owl. To-woo, to-wit, to-woo, a merry note, while greasy Joan doth keel the pot.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe and eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee.
If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended. That you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear. And this weak and idle theme, no more yielding, but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And as I am an honest Puck, if we have unearned luck, now to scape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends ere long, else the Puck a liar call. So, good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends.
You're going to make good job, man. Okay. The bride comes down. Next time.
We owe all of that to our dear friend, Derek Granger. Now, one of Ken's most long-standing friends was an actor called Sir John Gielgud. They'd met in 1950, and after John's retirement to the country, Kenneth would still visit him every summer at his stately retreat, Wilton Underwood. Let's have a glimpse of this wonderfully subtle actor in his most teasing mood.
One of the problems of the vacation, Father, is money.
Oh, I shouldn't worry about a thing like that at your age.
It wasn't until much later, when Derek became literary consultant to the National Theatre in the 70s, that Kenneth got to know Sir Laurence Olivier. But they soon became very close friends. Kenneth designed Larry's last London house in Mulberry Walk, and he often used to stay with him at his Sussex hideaway. Kenneth loved Larry's wicked sense of humour, One day, when they were in Larry's swimming pool, Larry pointed to his somewhat diminished physique and said, "Forgive me, Joan. Just look at me, Ken. To think that I was once a Hollywood sex symbol." When Larry had asked an old actor friend to stay, he turned to Kenneth saying, "God, he's become an old bore. Let's go back to London, and if I book a matinee and an evening performance every day, we won't have to talk to him." Kenneth became not only Larry's constant going companion, he also became his drinking buddy. Both of them looked forward to that moment in the evening when they could start on the whiskey together. This is one of Larry's favourite drinks. It was one of Larry's favourite drinks, which he always called Dada's Num-Mums. So, let's have a little touch of Larry in the night.
What's the matter with you, Joe?
Death, my dear. Just death.
Thank you very much, Larry and Joan. And Dame Joan is with us this evening, but I can't say this one, but she is here with us now. During the 90s, spotting Kenneth's vastly embracing gift for friendship, a member of Lord Longford's prison charity, New Bridge, recruited him as a prison visitor. Longford's idea was that prisoners should be able to talk frankly to a completely detached and non-judgmental friend. Kenneth performed these duties with his customary panache, visiting prisons across the country, and within the grim walls of Belmarsh and Parkhurst, he brought them a little hope and cheer. He brought that into the broken lives of his incarcerated friends. Always wonderfully spontaneous in thought and deed, he could achieve an instant rapport with all those he met. At a talk given by Quentin Crisp, the speaker asked his audience to put their questions on paper. Reading out Kenneth's question, Crisp replied, "Yes, Mr. Partridge, I would love to come back and have dinner with you." Kenneth had made another friend for life. Ken loved giving parties, as you all know, and having embraced Derek's world of theatre and television, he loved entertaining the stars. Around his kitchen table in the basement in Notting Hill Gate, he would gather such luminaries as Laurence Olivier, Joan Plowright, Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, Claudette Colbert, Ingrid Bergman, Alec Guinness, Tennessee Williams, Ian McKellen, and Lauren Bacall. "Take good care of the guest books," he warned Derek. "They might be valuable one day." As Natalie Wood remarked, "I love it here in your kitchen. It's so gemütlich." Kenneth lived his life con brio, with huge gusto. His sense of fun, often outrageous, was a constant presence. At work, at play, and how prodigally he delivered the bonus of laughter. Such gales of laughter, and often of gale force. Like Shakespeare's Yorick, how he loved to set the table on a roar. Just after he died, a friend wrote that he could already hear the celestial spheres shaking with mirth. Laughter seemed to follow Ken around always. Laughter and the love of friends were the lodestars of his life. What a force he was. Now, before I go, I'd like to introduce you to Kenneth's niece. But I need first to give you a little bit of background. This is all about the tiny Mediterranean island of Gozo. On a clear day there, if you stand on high enough ground, you can just glimpse across the sea the southern coast of Sicily. It was here that Kenneth had inherited a farmhouse in the seaside village of Garb, and though he wasn't to know it then, he was also to inherit a whole island family. The house had been left to him by Bobby St. John Roper, a king of sequins and feathers, and the leading designer of such cheerful frivolities as the costumes for the Palladium showgirls. One year, Kenneth lent his house to his sister for a holiday. She brought along her 17-year-old daughter, Jane, who, as only young girls will, promptly began a holiday romance with a handsome young islander. His name was Grace. When the holiday was over and Jane was back in England, she realized just how much she was in love and persuaded her parents to take her back to the island so that she and Grace, whose feelings were as strong as her own, could continue their affair. When she returned a third time to the island, she came with Grace's baby, a very Mediterranean state of affairs. So Jane and Grace were married in one of the island's beautiful little Baroque churches, and their baby girl was christened during the same ceremony. And thus they lived happily ever after. That happiness ever after has continued with Jane, now a grandmother, and Kenneth acquired a complete Mediterranean family of his own. During his last illness, he went several times to Gozo for rest and recuperation, where his Gozo family lovingly took care of him. As Jane always said, he was her Cupid. The Gozitan family are all here tonight in force, and now Jane wants to say thank you to all of you.
Fissimi familja tiegħi, irrid ngħidilkom grazzi tal-li ġejtu iċċelebraw il-ħajja tat-siju Ken tagħna. U rridkom tieħu pjaċir. That is in English. On behalf of my family and myself, I would like to thank you all for coming this evening to celebrate the amazing life of our Uncle Ken. And we want you all to have a fabulous time. And I also want to say, thanks a million, Derek. You really did him proud.
There we are. Lovely.
Here's the
If I
steadier.
could just have that. Oh, I got it the wrong way round.
Hey.
And I want to say a great big thank you to all from me for coming along tonight. And an especially huge thank you to Nico for comparing tonight with such enormous verve and such a wicked sense of fun. And to my old friend Andrew Connal, who put all the clips and visuals into the show with his usual unerringly immaculate touch. And to Ryan, the technical expert at Wilton's, helped so greatly in making everything run smoothly with our show tonight. And to Richard Walker, who designed the attractive invitation. And not least to my dear friends Jeremy and Phoebe and Diana for their lovely readings. And again, of course, to Anthony for starting the show off with a bang. At the age of nearly 96, I'm beginning to think this is very probably one of the last big passes I'll be giving, which I will also actually be present myself. But there was a compelling reason for holding it, and it's because it's actually provided the only occasion when all Kenneth's friends could get together to say a fond farewell. This is because he donated his body to medical research. The London Anatomy Centre did in fact hold a very beautiful service of Thanksgiving for all the donors in Southwark Cathedral earlier this year. But as there were several hundreds of them, space for friends and family was very limited, with only 3 or 4 of us per family. So Jane and I thought it would be a nice idea if we could get you all together at last for a few good laughs and give you a few good laughs so that you'll be able to say goodbye to Kenneth in a more entertaining way. Looking back on our story tonight, I'm struck by what a wonderful, charmed, and what lucky lives we both have had, and for all the wonderful friendships we've made along the way. Now on with the party, the part Kenneth would have enjoyed the most, being now the centre of attention with everybody talking about him. Thank you so much.
Hold on. Just a little bit more. As we all know, this is definitely not the last party that Derek is organising. We've got 4 more yet till he's 100, and then we'll have a massive one. So what I'd like is simply to have 3 cheers for the man who organised all of this. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Thank you. I'll go one first. Yeah. Okay, just one. Okay. I'll take that.